Okay, so without much ado, the plan, of course, first of all, we look at the GPT connector. I will talk briefly on prompt engineering. In other words, how can you use the GPT system to be more effectively, more creatively? Okay, so I'll give you a couple of examples. How do you set access limits to GPT? I'll cover that maybe briefly. It was one of the questions that was asked by, I think, one of you. I think it was RT or somebody else. How do you create a suggestions database? That was asked by one of you as well. I'll cover that in detail. And how to make use of the CSV files to actually store information. That one requires some background in Mojo. I'll try and do the best I can, okay? And after each session, maybe we'll have a quick Q&A. You can either type it into the chat if you're too shy, or just unmute and ask after each section, okay? Oops. This is session 4. Okay, so what is GPT? I just covered that again. It's a large language model. Okay, what that means is that when I say large, means it's really large. It's got billions of parameters, right? Billions of numbers which define it. There's a free API for now from OpenAI. We seem to be committed to making it free, but you know, there is of course restrictions on how much you can use and so on, right? I'm sure there is. And also the free API is also throttled as well. In other words, whenever the usage goes up, the API sort of like slows down, or it might give you a 502 error and stuff like that. Okay, so you need, if you want to, you can actually upgrade your OpenAI account right now. I think it costs something like $20 a month. And it's actually very useful. If you're a programmer, it's super useful. I actually use it right now as a co-pilot when it comes to programming. It really helps. It helps me a lot, right? But maybe for other people, for yourself, you're not programming on a regular basis, it might not be worth $20 a month. For me, it's actually worth $20 a month. You need an OpenAI account to generate the secret keys for your application. So this is what you need, something called the secret key. Okay, so the way you get your secret key is to go to this URL. Okay, you click on, there's a little circle there where you can click on your profile in the upper right corner. Okay, and once you click that profile, you will see a drop down coming down. You'll say View API Keys. Now, obviously, the steps I'm going through right now could change, likely will change, as time goes by, right? When they change the website, etc., and so on. But it actually works right now. You need to look for the View API Keys section. That's the main thing. And usually it's around your account. So once you click it, you will be taken to a page where it says, view API keys. These are your API keys there. And your API keys won't be fully displayed because they cannot be shared, okay, with anyone. So there is a button called Create a New Secret Key, right? Click on that, and as it displays the key, you got to cut and paste it into somewhere safe for yourself. Don't share it. Okay, and even when you go back to OpenAPI, it will not display it for you. Okay, so that's the button you want to click, at least for now. Okay, save your key somewhere and don't share it with others. All right. Okay, so there is a connector. You don't have to download it, but I would recommend that you do, because it contains examples on how you can use the connector in, well, I think I've got 6 examples here. We'll go through some of them today. Okay. So again, no need to for download if you want to use it. If you already know how to use it, you don't have to download the examples, right? But if you don't, then of course you would have to do it. So you click on community, search for my name, because it's posted under my username under my community page. So search for user Arnold. Okay. And look for OpenAI GPT connector. Right, it looks like that on the left. Hit the downloads, and it should be in your Arnold/OpenAI GPT folder. Okay, if you look inside, scrounge around, you'll see an examples folder with some usage examples. I may extend this later on in time. Okay. All right, but the root folder, in other words, OpenAI GPT, contains the actual source code to create the connector itself. So all the source code you need to make a connector like this is actually available there. Okay. All right, so how to use the connector? Well, there are a few steps. The first step is to create an empty file called secret.m. And that empty file you create in your bot's root folder. In other words, where the main.m is, okay? And you would put in your secret key, all right? And you just put in one line there, like in step 2, okay? So you put double quotations, just paste your secret key inside. The secret key normally starts with SK with a dash. Okay, so that's a secret key. And it's of course got a lot of numbers and letters after that. And then space, and then secret dash key with an exclamation mark, just like how you have it right here in step number 2. Okay, just save this file. Okay, and add this file using an include in your main.m. Okay, step 3 is to put in the cloud module itself, just like normally you put smojo/chat/something. In this case, the cloud module is called arnold/api/open-ai. Okay, and you add that to your chatbot's main.m. And of course, last of all, you just include your secret.m in main. And from that, that's all you need to do as far as activating the OpenAI GPT connector. Okay. There's only one word you need to use when using the connector, and that's the word called ask. And it takes in one input called a prompt, right, which is your text, what you want to ask the GPT-3. And it produces a sequence of responses. Now, there could be more than one response by default. It is one response, but it's still in a sequence. You can ask it to have 2 responses, 3 responses. So normally, you would just ask it for the first one. So use head, which is a word to retrieve the first in a sequence of responses. Okay, so sequence, the FEQ there stands for sequence, and sequence has got you can take the head of a sequence. Okay, so I'll show this to you shortly. Now, if you want to access the documentation, I suggest you do, right? You use Mojo/doc in a new tab. So create a completely new tab, right? You type in Mojo/doc and then docs space Arnold/API/OpenAI. There's documentation there. You hit the run script, which is the green triangle button, and you should be good to go. Okay. And the examples folder contain several examples and topics, okay, that you can use. Right, please, if your mic is switched on, please switch it off. Okay, so now I will just quickly demo setting up the connector and using it first outside your chatbot, and then later on maybe we look at a simple chatbot which does poems. Okay. Okay. You can never find. Yeah, there you go. Just give me a minute. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So I've got here Chatbot-Extras on my root folder. You won't have it on your root folder, obviously. So the first thing you do is you go to community, all right? You would have to click in search user Arnold, right? And then you would see my page here. Scroll down until you get OpenAI GPT and then click on the downloads, okay? You can do that right now if you want to, all right? So once you click on that, it should say download complete and stuff like that. And you go back as usual, click on your file explorer. You'll see my name somewhere here. Okay, click on that, and then you'll see inside of that, you'll see OpenAI GPT. Now, of course, I can't do it because I'm using my own account. Okay, and if you click at the OpenAI GPT, you will see these 3 files here. README, which tells you what to do. OpenAI is the actual cloud module itself, so don't fuss around with this. Install client is a way to create the OpenAI GPT connector for your own self. If you want to modify it and then share it with other people or for yourself, you can just run this install client and it will work for you. Okay, but the interesting thing for most of us would be the examples folder. And there are 6 folders here. Okay, so I've already got this, but you shouldn't show other people your secret key. Okay, and let's try one of the examples here. So there's Eliza. All right, so just what you do is just copy. So let me do a simple one first. Let's do a simple test. Okay, what is a chicken? Okay, so I've got the include here. So now in this case here, in this example number 1, we are not running this in the context of a chatbot. It's outside a chatbot. Okay, so I only need a few things. I just need my include. Sorry, not my include, the what's it called again? The cloud module, which is Arnold/API/OpenAI. That's the first thing. And then, of course, you can put in the secret.m, which is the secret key, which I shouldn't have shown you guys just now. And then, of course, you can just use ask, all right, to ask OpenAI, sorry, GPT-3, what is a chicken? So let's just try running this and see what we get out of it. Okay, and I hope it comes back, because oftentimes now it is very, yeah, okay, so it comes up with something. All right, and let me just open this up. So it says a chicken is a type of domestic bird, blah, 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 and so on, right? Now I can actually maybe wrap this up into a word so that it's maybe clearer to display. Right now, it's like, you know, it's going on forever, right? If I want to wrap it up into a word, maybe I say ask GPT-3 query. And I won't display anything. So I'll just say something like ask it. And I'll bind into a context variable. The idea is that we are trying to answer, right? We're trying to just paste this in with some nice HTML formatting, so it doesn't, you know, it doesn't really become too big, right? So this is how you would do it. And then, of course, I need to print this thing out. Okay, and I would say here, ask GPT-3. Oops, I'm sure what is what's happening here. Here is you have to get this to format it nicely so it doesn't, you know, run all over the shop, right? And it doesn't like that because it doesn't know what the CTX bracket is. So for that, you need to also do another include called include quote. Okay, and that should work. All right. Now it takes a lot of time because usually now GPT-3 is it doesn't seem to work for the width, right? So maybe I'll say to 100 pixels, and let's give it another shot. It doesn't want to wrap at all. Okay, so you might want to, you know, find out what kind of CSS you want to use if you wrap this thing to make it wrap. Let's try max width. So I myself can never actually remember how to do this kind of stuff. It's just so many options. And normally what I do is I just Google and ask how to wrap stuff. But essentially the idea is that you can actually introduce, just instead of the raw text, you want to put in some formatting. Like let's say, for example, I'll change the color of the font. You can put color red, for example, right? And that would then change the color of the font that's displayed. Yeah. So the width should work. I'm not sure why it's not working. Maybe, yeah. With, let's say 50%. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. But anyway, my point is that you can actually introduce your own formatting that you want for the GPT responses. Yeah, that's a very simple example outside of a chatbot. Okay, and maybe you want to have more than one response. Let's say, you know, you can ask the GPT the same question twice, and it will give. But if you want more than one response, you just set the num responses word to 2. All right. So there are many of these functions on the GPT. What's it called again? Documentation. Or to recall the documentation, just like smojo/doc, doc, and then put doc Arnold. Now this username, if you publish your own API, that'll be your username /API/open-AI, right? Save that and then run that. So I don't have to save it, just run it. So there are 5 words here. The main one is ask, which actually, you know, makes the prompt. Max tokens doesn't work very well. Model is only if you know what, let's say GPT, say OpenAI come up with other models in the future. You can change the model they're using. Right now, it's set to text DaVinci 003, which is GPT-3. Okay. Max responses is the maximum number of responses for GPT to return. The default is 1, and I would recommend you just stick with 1. But you can add more than 1 response by changing num responses. Okay. A secret key you already know. Okay. And let's move on. Let's move on. So I won't run this example because it's too simple. Let me try something that's more interesting, where we can move to something called prompt engineering. So instead of just asking the question as it is, okay, you can also get GPT to do some checking for you, for example. All right. So in this case here, what I've done, okay, Shalan suggests I use Internet Explorer. Unfortunately, I'm not running Windows. Okay, it's a Mac. All right, so you can get GPT to also check whether something makes sense or not. All right, so what I mean is this: instead of transferring the prompt directly, right? So here, what is a chicken? Okay, I can check. Okay, so I'm running a check here before. In other words, I'm wrapping the what's the chicken question in some other text, okay, using quotes. All right, so I've just wrapped this up. So I'm asking now GPT-3 a question. Is the sentence, what is a chicken, relevant to the topic of quantum mechanics? Well, obviously the answer is no. So you can answer yes, no, maybe, or not sure. Okay. And number 2, I can re-ask the question, what is spin? So spin is actually part of quantum mechanics. My background is in physics, by the way, so that's why I like quantum mechanics. And it will give you another answer. And what's a wave function? Wave function is definitely part of quantum mechanics. So obviously you'll say yes. So let's say running this example here and see what it says. Okay, so for the first question about chickens, is this chickens relevant to quantum mechanics? You'll say no. Right? Is spin relevant to quantum mechanics? You'll say not sure. And last of all, the wave function, you'll say yes. So this is a great way for you to check whether the questions that are being asked by a user make sense or not. Right? So for example, I could say, instead of quantum mechanics, I can change this to some other topic. Right? Let's say I say my own topic. Right? And then I can say my topic. Right, so they call this my topic, right? Or my subject. My dash subject. And so topic, I'll say just stop with confusing word, subject. Okay. So here I can say, you can change, for example, to like how we did this now, mathematics maybe. Right. Right. So what this will do is it will then run the check whether it's relevant for mathematics. Right. So obviously chicken, not sure, and of course it's not sure whether wave functions, because that's more wave functions are, it can be physics, it can be math. So we'll say maybe. Right. Let's try a different thing. How about we change this to let's say matrices. Right. So it should say yes. Right. So we'll say yes right towards the end. Okay. All right. So you can, in other words, wrap up a user's query in this way. Now you can do a lot more than just this kind of basic prompt engineering. You can do a lot of other stuff like give it instructions, give it reasoning skills, etc. And you can run much longer queries based on what the user is trying to ask you. Okay. Now GPT is not perfect. Like here, for example, if I ask it, is 13 a prime number? Please explain. Right. If I run this, it will probably say, no, 13 is not a prime number, unless they've changed it, right? Yeah, see, in this case, it says 13 is not a prime number, which is a wrong answer, okay? So you can't completely, in fact, you can't rely on GPT-3 for a lot of stuff like this, like no, 13 is not a prime number is a whole number greater than 1. 13 can be divided by 1 and 13 and other numbers like what, such as 3 and 4, right? So it thinks that 13 can be divided by 3 and 4. So my point is that GPT is not infallible. It's a language model, all right? So what it does well with is things like language, okay? So for example, let's say, so this kind of stuff, like factual stuff, it does very badly. So let me give you an example where it can be used quite well. And let's change this query here, this very simple query, to something that's more, let's say, for programming, okay? Let's say a write function in C to reverse string, okay? If you run something like this, it will then, it's better at this kind of stuff, all right? Unless it dies on me. Doesn't seem to like it. Okay, died. In other words, GPT was taking too long to respond. Okay, it could be because the server is full. It could be because my quota is done. It could be a lot of different things. I don't know. Okay, let me try it one more time. I hope it doesn't die. Yeah, it probably has died. Oh, it did it. Okay, fantastic. So this is a method that uses to reverse a string, okay, in C, which is great. Okay, so when it works like this, so it's good for this kind of stuff. All right, so programming is actually a wonderful tool to program. It may not give you the best kind of code, but it gives you fairly okay code, right? It can be used for, but it's very bad for factual data. It's bad for things like mathematical reasoning or any kind of reasoning that you want to have beyond the basic simple steps. Okay, but you can actually give it extra information in order to perform better. Okay, and that's where your input as a chatbot creator really helps. Okay, where you can inject this extra information that makes GPT a whole lot more useful. Okay. Okay, there are some questions. Let me just see the questions on the chat. Please demo the maximum allowed questions per session. Okay, I will do this later on. I'm coming to that. Okay. So let's look at handling IDKs. So this is a simple example, an extension of the relevance example. Let me just go back and just change my examples, right? I don't want this as an example here. Let's say, what is the chicken again? Okay. And relevance checking, I've already explained this to you already, but you can extend this with a simple, with a better example, like in your chatbots, that is. So here I've got a topic called mathematics, and it does the same thing, just checks and see whether the topic is relevant or not. Okay, and it's useful. You can actually put this into a chatbot and easily with a catch-all. So this is the catch-all here. The catch-all basically runs the topic, and then it runs the relevance check. Right? Is my topic relevant? Is the question relevant to the topic at hand? And it's not, then you'll say, sorry, this isn't relevant. Otherwise, you will say, no, I don't have it in my database. And you can ask then GPT a question. Okay. I won't go through this because it's fairly simple. You can download the copy, the code yourself. Okay, so Eddie asks, why is it that I asked ChatGPT via the browser is 13 a prime number and it gives the correct answer? And the answer to that is that the response for GPT, first answer is that the response for GPT is not stable. It's always changing depending on the time, and because there is a random element to it as well. But I'm guessing that the reason why it gives you the correct answer is because people are making a lot of improvements to ChatGPT. Okay, so the ChatGPT part, because it's a paid part, they're actually making a lot of improvements, and it's probably better at asking this kind of answers, giving this kind of answers. But I honestly wouldn't trust the answer at all. Okay, 13 is a very small number, but how about other numbers which are bigger, other prime numbers which are bigger, right? And the API could be an older, maybe a simpler, older model, which doesn't have all the corrections and so on, that they're layering on top. So ChatGPT is not the same as GPT-3, right? The model is the same, but ChatGPT has got some engineering layered over it to make the model more friendly, more usable, etc. Okay, so I hope that answers your yes. So ChatGPT has a lot of support and work behind it, and the basis of it though is the same. It's still the GPT-3. Okay, so let's try two other examples. A poem. Okay, so this is more like a fun kind of thing. Okay, so now I can't run this outside by itself because it's actually part of a chatbot topic. So I will move it into CU101, where I have already copied this code. Okay, so the idea is that I've got a mood. Okay, the mood could be sad, happy, angry, envy, and so on, right? And and your chatbot recognizes a few kinds of moods, right? And you might want to make this more fancier, like putting some, icons, whatever else it is, right? And once you have a mood, you want to create a poem, right? So the way I've done this is to use prompt engineering and say, write a 4-line haiku that expresses the feeling of whatever that word might be, and each line with a BR. So that, in other words, it makes it into a poem rather than making it into a, so you can give it instructions like this to format the text itself. Okay, I can even say, well, let's try this chatbot. Let me just hook it up for you. So this one here is called poem. Okay, let's publish this. Okay, and test it out. How are you feeling today? Let's say I say happy. Okay, and it goes into ChatGPT. So it says, green fields of bliss, the sun warms my smiling face. Joyful songs of birds bring peace to my spirit. Okay, that's its little 4-line haiku, right? And I could say, okay, give it extra instructions like highlight the keyword. Oh, not the keyword. Oh, the word in red using CSV. Let's try that. Okay, I'm not sure if it will work or not, but it's worth a shot. Oops. All right, so let's say I'm feeling sad. Okay, it doesn't quite work. Okay, but you can then craft the, well, there's a whole thing in red, not just the word by itself, right? So, but you can have to play around with this. You can say just the word, maybe okay, let's try this. So it's clearer, all right, to the bot, to GPT, what needs to do. All right, so GPT is great for this kind of stuff, right? Where it's sort of, angry. sort of not really factual. Okay, so look, it's actually trying to do this. It's trying to do it, but it's somehow, failing by giving, by putting in all these text here, but it's not really, it's putting the right HTML, but somehow it's not really appearing when I put it out. It could be because it's not really doing HTML. It's actually escaping the HTML. So I will try one last try. Do not escape. Okay, let's try one last time and see if that works. So this is how you would do it. You would interactively, try to actually do this. Let's try angry again. Okay. The weight that you have now, it works. You see, so it's not escaping the thing, it's just actually putting it. So you need to know how to prompt it properly so that it can do the right thing. So you can see here the word angry is bolded, and then it goes on and does other stuff, right? Okay, how about another word? Try another one. Let's try sad. Okay, sort of does it. There is a new line here which shouldn't be there, etc. Right? But it's getting there. So you need to actually experiment with this. And sometimes you can actually clean up the responses just by using some Smojo to actually do it for you, rather than relying on GPT to actually do it for you, which perhaps not so effective, right? And more flaky. Okay, so in other words, you can make this prompt fairly complex. That's my point. Okay. Okay, so let's try one last one. So there's a fifth one, which is an Eliza, which is a sort of like a chatbot. Do I have it here? Yeah, I have Eliza here. Okay, so it's a longer chatbot. Okay, and you can see how this works. It's got two, right now it only handles two feelings, I think. Sorry, three: sad, happy, and angry. And apart from that, it can't do very much. And it gets the person's name, and it actually does, it asks the person, how are you feeling, etc., and so on. And it back and forth, it mixes ChatGPT responses with just normal chatbot stuff. Okay, using templates. So it's a mixture of the two. Okay, and I'll encourage you to copy and paste the Eliza bot and give it a shot as well and see whether you can extend it. Okay, now let me go on. Let's see now. Okay, let me look at the questions. Yes, so in short, yes, Eddie, that's correct. ChatGPT, which is the DaVinci 003, is not the same as ChatGPT. That's correct. The underlying model is the same, but ChatGPT has got other stuff layered onto it before it even starts. Okay. Yes, you can write love letters, Tabby, and Valentine's. Yes, Valentine's Day letters as well if you want to. Shalens asked a good question, or make a good point. Looks like an ode to coders whose jobs are at risk. Well, actually, the answer is no. I would say, in all honesty, I'm using it right now to code. I'm writing a virtual machine for Smojo, and I'm using ChatGPT to help me write all the boilerplate code that I don't like to write. It works really well. It works really well, and I would highly recommend. Actually, it's not that coders' jobs are at risk. On the contrary, it makes coders far more effective than you would normally be. All right. So I would say it's such a big boon to coders, right? Can you change the word sad to blue? Yeah, do the experiment. You'll find it. I'll share the new version of the poems, although you can just copy this with you guys later on. Okay. Can you explain again the difference between GPT-3 and ChatGPT? Well, the underlying model is called GPT-3, so they're both shared. But ChatGPT has got engineering over it to prevent things like abusive responses or weird responses and so on. Okay. And if you go to Twitter, you'd see a lot of people trying to jailbreak the GPT-3 model. Okay, so it does have safety features put in so that if you ask it bad things like, how do I kill myself and so on, or how to make a bomb, it will not respond to you on those things. Okay, those are safety features that they had to put in before they release the model. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Is GPT-3 also? Yes, GPT-3 is created by OpenAI, but there are other large language models available. But GPT-3, of course, GPT-3 is the most famous because they made it very popular. Okay, there's one by Google, one by I think Meta, even one by Alibaba, if I'm not wrong. So GPT-3 can ask bad things. Yes, you can, but like I said before, it has a safety. Even GPT-3 has a safety feature, but I think, yes, Baidu as well, correct? There are many other ones. I'm sure there are more companies. Only the big companies can do this because it takes a lot of compute power to train them and a lot of compute power to serve answers to so many people, like how it is happening right now. Okay, so each one of these queries is actually costing these companies a lot of money. You can try it not just by the API. You should really go to the chat.openai.com and try ChatGPT there directly. Okay, if you are a programmer, by all means you should really have a go at it. It's I find it extremely useful. For other users, I can't really say. Okay, so both can register. You only need to register for one, and that gives you access to both. All right, so next, I'm going to show you an application of using the chat database. Okay, so now, for the next two examples, I will be using the Chatbot Extras. So Chatbot Extras has a lot of examples, which are maybe, how do I do this? How do I break things into paragraphs? How do I make random numbers? How do I do a lot of different things, right? So there are examples here. It's again in my community page. You can download it from username Arnold. Okay, and it's under Chatbot Extras. Okay, and of course it's not static. I'll be adding examples pretty frequently because a lot of people ask for questions. And for the longer ones, if I think it's interesting, I would add it to Chatbot Extras. And if you have any suggestions on what else to add to Chatbot Extras, please do so, and I will put it in for you. Okay, so the idea today for this part is that we're going to create a suggestions database. This was asked by one of you guys. Okay, and this technique uses the Smojo/chat/database cloud module, and the code is in suggestions.m topic in Chatbot Extras. Okay, so the technique stores each suggestion into a hash. So you need to know what a hash is. So a hash is a key value store, and ordinarily it would be stored just in memory. We're going to, it's called a data structure. So a hash is a data structure that stores a key and a value, okay? So you need to know how to store keys and values, and you need to know how to retrieve them. Okay, so that is outside the scope of what I'm going to do today. I would recommend that you do the Smojo basic. So that's a basic tutorial that you have in your IDE. It covers this and a lot of other topics you need to know if you want to develop more of these advanced type bots, which can do more stuff. Okay. And the example given in Chatbot Extras is just a suggestions based on time. So in other words, if I make a suggestion, then it will record the time, all right, very accurately and store it in the hash along with my suggestion, right? But I want to change this behavior so that instead of time, I give the user a unique ID. So each time he comes into the chatbot, okay, his ID is retrieved and his suggestions, he can't make the same suggestion, or he can't make more than one suggestion, right? So it's like if you want to just replace what his suggestion, let's say he can't make like 1,000 suggestions. He can only make one suggestion. That may be helpful in some situations. I don't know. Okay, so we're going to do that. like I'm not finished off with the slides. Apologies. So again, you want to look, I would recommend that you would look at the documentation for Smodjo chat database, right? So in a new tab, you type in smodjo/doc, then you put doc space smodjo/chat/database. The first line basically loads the documentation module, and the second line basically displays the documentation for the module that you're looking for. So the word doc is that's the heavy lifting, okay? And then you want to click the green triangle. So this is one of the few places where you want to run the green triangle, okay? Which is the play or run script button. So the smodjo/doc module is also, by the way, documented. All right, it documents itself, and you can look at the documentation. It's quite extensive. So it's smodjo/doc, then you put doc/space smodjo/doc, and that will give you all the words that are supported in the documentation. And it also tells you how to build your own build and document your own cloud modules. Okay, there's an example there that you can just copy and paste and fiddle around with. Okay, another example of creating a cloud module is actually in the GPT Connector. Okay, if you look at the install client, I think it's there. All right, so I've already shown you how to download the Chatbot Extra, so I won't do that part. I will show you now how to run the suggestions example. Okay, so let's try that next. Hang on, there's a question here. Yeah. So where was I? Okay, here you go. So here I want to create a suggestions database, or store suggestions. So again, Chatbot Extras, right? In your case, it'll be Arnold/Chatbot Extras once you download it from my. So you go to community page to download it, community page, search for Arnold, right? And then you can see here Chatbot Extras. It might be down, might be up, right? Just click on downloads, you'll get it, okay? And then you go around to Arnold/Chatbot Extras, and in Chatbot Extras, there are a lot of different examples here. For the camera one, I've covered, I think, the last session. I've not covered date check, which I did for, I think, one of you guys. I think it was Ayumi, I think, who asked for this. And there are a few different examples here. Okay, so the one we want to look at today is a suggestion, right? So we're going to just copy this code here, and I'm going to place it in my CU 101. So let's close this up so I don't mess things for you. Go to my topics, and I'm going to just plonk it in here. Okay, so copy and paste, save suggestion .m, and I'm going to include suggestions, right? All right, I don't need the OpenAI thing anymore, so I'm just going to copy, comment this out. Okay. Now, what I do need to do is to put in the smodjo/chat/database. But if I'm not wrong, the suggestions already does that for me right at the top. Oh, it doesn't do it for me. Okay, so you need to put this in here, right? So it's smodjo/chat/database. All right, and I'm going to run this. I'm going to publish it right now. Okay, so let's see that it works first. Okay, and it's here. So if I click on this suggestions, it will say I've got one suggestion, right? Made yesterday. Make all cows green, right? Which is maybe not a very helpful suggestion. But so it says type in something of your own, okay? So let's say make all mice big, okay? And then if I type in suggestions again, all right, it will give me two suggestions here. Make all cows green was the first suggestion, and then the second one was made today. Make all mice big. All right, you can see it's sorted actually by date. All right, so we're going to figure out demo how to do this and how to make it work, or what makes it work. All right, so let's go deep dive a bit more. All right, so here I only have two rules. One which is called suggestions, all right, and that is going to respond to the button click basically. So the button click is on welcome. So when it starts up, it's going to display a single button called suggestions, all right, and that's all it is out here. Okay, click to make a suggestion. All right, and change from suggestion to suggestion. Yes, singular. Okay, click to make a suggestion, right? So it matches. And this will display some text with a button, okay? And this, the first rule is going to just respond. It's a what's it called again? It's a literal match that I've not used any types of things here. So it's very simple, just to illustrate the point, right? So this system it's going to respond to one word called suggestion, in which it will. The first thing it does is to get all the suggestions and stuff those suggestions into a mem. So the mem is called suggestions here, right? A mem called suggestions. All right. So this is a very handy a method so that you don't hit the database too often. So you hit it once, then you save the results to a mem temporarily. All right. So this is a very common pattern that you would use when it comes to dealing with databases, so that you don't overtax your database, right? So you just say get suggestions and just stuff that into the mem called suggestions. And here, this suggestions is a hash. So if you don't know what a hash is, right? You can actually head over to Smojo. All right, Smojo, come on, where are you? Oops, Smojo. And there's something called hashes here. All right. This is a data structure called a hash, or in other languages, you could call a dictionary. All right, click on hashes, and it gives you a detailed instructions on how to use hashes. All right, so I'll leave it up to you. I would recommend at this stage, I think all of you should at least try the basic Smojo tutorials. It's fairly easy in the sense that it's very short. Each section is just 1 page long. But there are questions there for each and every one of these things. All right. Let's look at the welcome, for example, right? So there is some instructions here and a quiz. So each part ends with a quiz, and there are answers to the quiz as well. Okay. And I would recommend that you just try that along with the quizzes. And if you have any questions, always ask in the main chat. Okay. But the basic should be more than enough to understand almost all of the code that you'll be seeing in the chatbots and elsewhere. Okay, the basic plus just one extra, which is the local words, just this one part here. The rest of it here, the intermediate and advanced, you really don't have to know, because that's just the other 1% of Smojo. So the 99% of Smojo that you would need is in basic Smojo already. Okay, so you don't have to know all the rest. So basic plus local words, 99%. Okay. The rest of it is just 1%. So you don't have to know those things. Okay, so anyway, so suggestions is a hash, and hash comes, you can check the size of the hash. The size of the hash is 0. Then of course there are no suggestions yet. So your bot needs to respond, no suggestions yet. Why don't you add your own suggestion? Okay. And that's the first A. But the second response, this MM here, is another response, and there's no guard to it. So if there are no suggestions, it will go here, and then it will return to your chatbot. Okay. But if there are suggestions, then what will happen is this section here will be run, right? Because the size is non-zero. It will take the suggestions and format them and put a nice, line. This HR here is a single line. And it'll say, type in something to submit your own suggestion. Okay. Right. And this format suggestions is where it actually grabs stuff off the database. Sorry, I beg your pardon. You've already grabbed the stuff off the database here in Get Suggestions. You've stuffed it into a mem called suggestions. And so I'm just taking the suggestions and just formatting them, right? So this is the formatting code. I won't go into this code because it does require you to understand basics module. Okay. It uses hashes and a reduction and a quotation here. That's from here to here, it's called a quotation and a reduction, right? So you need to know those things. It's in basics module. But you can easily, even if you don't understand it, you can still hack this code to add in your own formatting and so on. So here, like for example, here, I've read the time, I've converted it into Singapore time, because it's 480 means 8 hours. The times are stored, the times that we're using by default in Smojo are stored in UTC, which is, or GMT is the old word to use. UTC is the new word. It's a universal time coordinate, right? But we are 8 hours plus GMT. So I've used 480, which is 480 minutes. And this is the format that I want it in. Okay, there are other formats you can use with hour and minute, for example. Okay. And then I've called format time, which formats the time nicely in a string. And then I've set it to a context variable called time, which I've then passed it onto here. Okay, at this time, this is suggestion, this time suggestion, right? So you can easily hack this format suggestions word, all right, to suit your own. These two, you don't have a hack because they just use the chat database. Okay, this is to get the suggestions, so to actually retrieve, and this is to store a suggestion. All right. So it should be fairly clear, I guess, how to do this. Now, let me just go quickly to the queries. Okay, so Tabby asks, how will this be saved or gone when you don't use it? Well, the database for now, it is semi-permanent, okay? So it only is deleted when you delete your account. Now, Ayumi says, why is MMM not MM? So MMM is nothing to do, this MMM here has got nothing to do with this. So this is to do with this guy here, you know, to make a multi-line, right? This one here is a format indicator. So like DD means day. MMM means like FEB, JAN, MAY, DEC, a 3-letter acronym for your dates. Like when I run this bot here, if I publish the bot here, okay. And I say suggestion, you can see here, it will say 17 FEB 2023, right? So this format can be changed. So the format is day, space, month, space, year. If I can change this to something like, you know, MM, so that it is, you know, maybe something like this, day, month, year. Okay, in which case, if I publish it, it will change the format. Okay, if I click on suggestion again, it will say, can you see the format has changed? So 17th Feb 2023, right? Here you can see the format has changed. You can even add things like hours and minutes, right? So hours is capital H, right? That's small h, which is a 12-hour clock, and HH is a 24-hour clock. I'll use 24-hour clock. Minutes. The small m's are minutes and seconds, okay? So if I take this, I publish this, all right? You will see it turns out to be, it gives me the time in minutes and seconds, okay? If I change the time zone to 0, it will give me the time zone in UTC. So 0 time zone is in UTC. You can have negative time zones, you can have in minutes. So time zone is in minutes, right? But in Singapore, it's UTC plus 8, so it is 480 minutes. That's 60 times 8. Okay. All right. So now let me move on. Well, before I move on, let me just see the questions. Yes, that's right, Ayumi. It's Jan, February, and so on. Correct. Tabby, I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, I see. The chatbot itself, that depends on your chatbot. The data will remain always. So the data that you have here, that I'm storing here, is not tied to any chatbot. I can create a new chatbot as long as it's under my username. I can still access the same database with the same key. It will give me the same answer. Okay, so the database here is shared on a per username basis. That means my username, like in Arnold, or your username, whatever it is. Okay, so you can have multiple chatbots storing or retrieving data from the same database. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Okay. And even if you delete your chatbot, the data still remains. Okay, you can change your chatbot, it still remains. All that matters is the database name and the database key. So the key and the database name are super important. If you lose either one of these, your data is gone. Either it's there, but it's just hanging around there without anyone knowing how to get it back. It's orphaned data. So don't do that, because then if it gets too big, we'll have to then reset the database for your account. And that means everything disappears after a while. Okay, so be careful how you use this. Clean it up if you don't need to store too much. Okay, so I'm going to make a small change to this. I hope you just understand right now what it's doing and roughly how it works. The key part, or the important part right now, is that this database is storing stuff by time. You can see here that where it stores stuff is the now. All right, so now means the present moment, right? If I make a new tab here and click now, put a dot there, which prints things out, it will run this number. So this number here is the present time. I can do, you know, again, like I did before, it's now 480, day, month, year, hour, minute, second, format, time. All right, and it gives me the time. And if I run this again and again, you can see the seconds are changing. All right, it gives me a new now each time. So now means the current system time. Okay, now I want to change that. So in other words, what's being stored in the database, right? What's being stored is a hash, and the hash is called suggestions, right? Right, and the database that's being used is called suggestions database. Right, that's from here. Okay. That's the database name, suggestions database. Okay, and the key is it's being stored under suggestions. The key is called suggestions, right? And so what's being stored are key value pairs. So I've got, in this case, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a certain date internally. I'm not saying this a date, I'm saying this is an example, right? And it says make all cows green. Okay, and then maybe I have another entry which I made already, and maybe on a different date. Okay, so the dates here are actually stored on a millisecond basis. Okay, millisecond. So make all mice big, etc. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that instead of using time as my key here, time as my differentiating factor. Okay, if you cannot have two keys the same key in a hash. You cannot have something like this, where it's exactly the same key. These two keys are exactly the same, but the data is different. You cannot have that, right? Make all dogs bark. Right, this will not work. Okay, wrong. Okay, it cannot work. The keys are automatically unique. So these keys are unique. If you use the same key as the one that already exists, it will overwrite the previous key. So now there's not much chance that it will happen in this scenario, because I'm using the time, and not just time by second, time to accurate to within the millisecond. That means 1,000th of a second. All right, so very likely it will change. It is just my trick to get a unique key. Not guaranteed, but you know, it's good enough. Okay, but now let's say I want to give each user a unique key. All right, so how do I do that? So what I'm going to do is this. Okay, I am going to go back to suggestions, and this time here, okay, I am going to automatically retrieve a key, a unique key, unique ID, and if it's not there, I'm going to create it. All right. So for that, I'm going to do an include random. Right. So include. Right. So now, if you notice, this random thing is not a topic, is not a file on your database, or it's like not a file on your folders. It is actually a part of the internal parts of Smojo. Okay. This section here is not an internal part of Smojo. They are cloud modules. Right. So this is this part here. This include here where it's got no M, no slash, or nothing. This is an internal Smojo module. It's built in. Okay, it's part of the language itself. Okay, these out here are not built in. These are cloud modules. In other words, any one of you could publish a cloud module, just like I did for the OpenAI the GPT Connector. And you can publish your own modules if you want. In this case, the user called Smojo has published it. So this all come from user Smojo. All right. Okay, so I'm going to include random, and I'm going to call secure random. Right, so you don't have to know what this means. This is just to initialize random numbers. Okay, so I'm going to create some random numbers and use that as my ID for each user. All right, so I'll say here, I'll add in something called maybe get ID. Get ID, user ID, get ID. Okay, and for this, I'm going to use the persistent storage. So remember, persistent storage is associated with every user's device. So if I have, let's say, a laptop, then it'll be attached to that laptop. I have a phone, it'll be attached to the phone. The persistent storage is attached to the user's device. All right. So I'll say, let's say, I'll call the key that I need for this user as an ID. Right. So I'll say this is an ID. All right. Or let's say user ID. Okay. And I'll call p hash at, which retrieves. I discussed this, I think, last week. Or the week before last. Week before last or last week? I can't remember. The week before last. Sorry. No, last week. Last week. Yeah. P hash at, and I'll check for a now value. And if it's now, I need to generate the user ID. All right. And then I exit. Otherwise, I'm just going to retrieve whatever it is here. So I need to drop it. I need to drop this, and then generate the ID. Generate the ID here, and then exit. Otherwise, I'm just going to retrieve return whatever is being returned by get ID, right? And then gen ID. Okay. I'm going to call IRAND. So IRAND is just going to give me a random number. All right. So if I delete the default here, include random IRAND dot. You can see here the IRANDOM, sorry. Okay, it's going to give me a random number on each iteration. Can you see that? Okay, so I'm going to use this random number, and I don't care if it's negative or positive. I'm just going to use this as my random, and I'm going to concat that with a string, just so that I can get into a string. It's very useful to store strings, so that you can display the things quickly or easily. You don't have to convert it back to a string if you don't want to. Okay, so I'm just going to use a string for this, and it's going to create this thing here, and I'm going to store it, duplicate it first, and then store the duplicate inside. Let's call it maybe in ID. I'm going to store the ID under the key user ID, right? And then I'm just going to return the ID itself. So this is a very verbose way of writing it. This is one way you can write it. I would write it a bit differently. So I'm only writing this for your benefit. How I would write it is a bit different. I would just say something like, right? So I won't use locals at all. This and this are equivalent. This might be clearer for some people. This is how you write a more efficient code. All right, but they are equivalent. They do exactly the same thing. All right. So the idea is that you're creating a random number and a random integer. It could be negative, it could be positive. Converting it to a string, which is this part here. Saving it to a variable called ID, and then saving that ID under the key user ID, but returning the value of ID as well because you need to return it. All right, and you're done. Okay, so now this get ID will automatically return an ID for you, and if it doesn't exist, it will create it and then log it for you straight away as the user's ID. All right, so I'm going to take get ID here, and I am going to replace that now with get ID. Okay, that's it. So now I'm going to take this. I can already save this now. So now for this thing, instead of of course, the first two are both, remember what I said, that this suggestions database doesn't get, destroyed or whatever it is, right? So I need to clear the old suggestions. So I'm going to add this. I'm going to add something called clear suggestions, or to destroy my suggestions, right? Clear all. All right, and done. Okay, and it's going to, I'm going to run it in a B here, and all it's going to do, it's going to basically save a null value or an empty value into my suggestions. So I'm going to do this here. Okay. And you decide either a null value on return, or I would recommend using the default thing, which is sorted or hash. Okay, so in this case, so it's up to you what you want to use as your default. If it's a null, then you're going to handle the null. I'm just storing in. So this is the key. Sorry, suggestions is the key that I've used. Hash is an empty or a blank dictionary. And here I've got my suggestions database, which is the name of the database. I'm storing it into the database itself. That's it. Okay. So if I type in clear all suggestions, or right, it will then clear everything. All right. I'm lazy, so I just type clear. Maybe it's better, be safer to have clear all suggestions if you're making this, if you're using this on a regular basis. Okay. Or maybe you can have another chatbot that manages all your suggestions. That's also possible. So you store suggestions using one chatbot like you're doing with your existing chatbots, but you create a second chatbot which is going to display your suggestions, clear them, manage, or run admin over those suggestions. Okay, there are two chatbots, one for your ordinary users, another one which is like an admin thing you can use to do all the admin stuff and look at the suggestions that already been made, delete them, etc. You can make this topics a lot more complicated. Okay, so let me just give this a whirl, and so you can see what's happening. Let's publish it again. Okay, so I'm going to click on suggestion one more time. You can see here there are two suggestions here. Okay, one made yesterday and one which I made just now. And unfortunately, I am required to type in something. Oops, it doesn't quite like that. I'm not sure why. Let me check and see what's going on here. Okay. Type in your own suggestion. Save suggestion. Thank you. What is save suggestion? Yeah. Yep, should be okay. Did I make a mistake? No. No, no, no. It's okay to me. Let's give it another shot. Okay. Okay, it looks like I've got an error here. Okay, so it says long cannot be cast to string. Okay, I see why. Okay, and the reason is a bit subtle. Okay, the reason is actually in fact very subtle. And what it is this. Previously, unfortunately, I was using this as a number, a long. So a long is an internal representation for module. It's called it's like an integer. Okay, so the hash was a sorted hash. So I've used a sorted hash. So the hash I used was hash sorted. All right. And where was that sorted hash? Just give me a second. Yeah, there you see here. I've used a sorted hash right at the start. I'm going to undo this to use a normal hash. And these sorted hashes, you basically will sort on the key. So let's say I've got a key, let's say A, for example, right? Or let's say in this case, number 1, and let's say to some string here, right? So it will try to sort based on your key, and your key types cannot be mixed. So previously I was using the time, which is an integer, but now I'm trying to use an ID, which is a string, right? Make all dogs bark, right? So it doesn't like that because string, integer is a mixed type, and mixed types cannot be used with a sorted hash. For a normal hash, you can, but the existing hash, unfortunately, is sorted, so I have no choice. So what I got to do now is, instead of trying to display the suggestions, I got to clear them, which resets everything, and then I can make all my code work. But I got to be really careful here. So each time I make a new suggestion, it puts an empty hash inside there, so that's still good. Okay, and I need to clear the hash first. So let me just publish this, right? Publish it first. Okay, instead of this, let me just go back to the new link and typing clear. So clear, if you know, will clear up everything. Now, if I type in suggestion, it will say no suggestions. Why don't you add your own? And I'll say make all dogs. Okay. It says thank you. Okay, which is the appropriate thing. Now, if I type on suggestion again, oh. Okay, the problem is that my code here attempts to interpret the time, the key as a time. So I need to comment this part out. It cannot be a time, right? No longer a time here. And I cannot display the time anymore. I just have to display the suggestion by itself. Okay. So because just now I was storing the time, now I'm no longer storing the time anymore. So let me just republish this thing. Okay. Then retry this by clicking on suggestion, and it should work, right? So it says make all dogs bark, but it doesn't have the time, obviously, because I've not stored the time here. If you want to store the time, and yet have what I say, a unique response or what else it is, right? Like per user, then you need to use a hash of tuples or something else, some other data structure instead of just strings. Okay, so I won't go into that because you need to know it a bit more module than you already do right now. The important part is this, that right now there's only one suggestion, and that's from me, called make all dogs bark. Previously, because I'm storing it by username, but by time, if I make a second suggestion, that second suggestion will be recorded. But let's say if I say something like now, make all cats swim. Okay. And if now I display the suggestion, you can see it should only say make all cats swim. The previous suggestion has been overwritten. So no longer make all dogs bark. It's been overwritten by make all cats swim. And this suggestion here is unique on a per person basis. Or sorry, on a per device basis. Okay, so that's my example. I hope it's clear, not confused you too much. Okay. I've got a few questions now. Okay, let me see now. Okay, what is B? And so B means B colon is just a way for you to run some Mojo commands before. So B is for before your A. So there are two ways you can run Mojo commands within your rules. Okay. So the B means to run a command before. Okay. There's a way to run a command after. That's using C colon. So a B colon is running before and A colon after. They are both very useful. So your A's are your answers or the responses, which is your A or your MMs and so on, right? They are calculated after your B, but before the C. So it's B first, and then the response, and then the C's, okay? There is documentation for this in the recipe section, but maybe not for B, because B, I think we just recently included it. But the recipe section for Chatbot describes how to use a C. So a C and a B are very similar. Right, it's just that the B's run before. Okay, and there's okay. Let's see now. You forgot your password. It's gone, but still in the air. I have no idea what it means, Caddy. Arnold, how do I check what dupe means? Okay, for that it's in the basics module under stacks. So look at the basics module part. Then you can see what it is. Okay. What does the code to create a triple dot? What is the code to create a triple dot or some sort of a chatbot? Okay, so if you want to have like a weighting and so on, you can't really do it for this one. Okay, you need to put in some JavaScript, which unfortunately we don't have right now. Okay. The instruction to clear is to clear user ID. It will not clear for other users, right? No, it will clear all. The clear, if you look at clear, what it does. So the question was that there is a clear here. This is clearing the entire database, not just for that user's data. Okay. Why is it important to change random number of any number into a string before you display it? Mainly because when you do a CTX, for example, let's say if I want to display for debugging, for example, okay, I want to just display the thing here, right? CTX user ID, okay, I can put back here the user ID, right? All right, so if I print this out like that, okay, and I try it again to make suggestion. You can see here, this is my unique ID right now. The system has generated for me, and it won't change. Okay, I can make this display easy for debugging. Okay, this is not for your normal kind of thing, just for debugging. All right, and in that case, you know, having it as a string is helpful. It's not a big deal. If you want to make this into a number, also can. The other point is that numbers are longer to store, take more memory, so to speak, than a string. So a string of characters like this, like what you see out here, is only about, you know, a few bytes long. It's only like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe about 20 bytes long. It's very short. The a pure number is actually many more bytes to store. So there's a penalty for storage. Okay, so it's more efficient for storage. It's more convenient for use to convert it to a string. Okay, this last section is really if you're trying to create a chatbot. Sometimes I think one of you, and it has happened a few times, where people want to create chatbots which contain a lot of information. Let's say, for example, like a mini database, not quite a database, but a mini database, which they want to search very quickly. All right. So in these kinds of instances, one way you can do this is by using a CSV file. Right. We might get you maybe more efficient ways of doing this later on, but right now this is probably the simplest way to do it. Yeah. And the data is actually tied in with your chatbot. Okay. Hang on, someone just entered the room. Let me go back again. Okay, so what is CSV? Well, CSV stands for comma separated value. Okay, and it's a very simple format in which you can actually store data. Okay. Oops. Okay, what's happening with my slides now? All right. Okay, it's a simple. So a CSV is a simple way for you to store data. And it's useful. You have a lot of facts that your chatbot needs to recall. Like, for example, maybe you have a list of items that you want to store in a database, right? Like prices and other stuff. Yeah. We will extend the CSV system so that you can do a lot more than just what you have right now. Okay. Where you can have maybe make it more dynamic. But right now it's fairly simple, but still very useful, I would say. All right. So it's a bit like search that you did, I think, in session 6. But a lot more flexible. But unfortunately, it's also a bit, also harder to use. I would say a bit harder to use. Okay, you do need to know a little more Smojo for this. And it's harder because you need to know some basic data structures, okay, which is actually good for you to know anyway. If you're serious about trying to build anything or program, then you of course need to progress beyond the baby steps that we've been teaching you so far to do more things, learn more things, right? Okay, so the documentation again is under smojo/chat/CSV. As an example there, how you can use this, but I think I will need to show you how we can use it effectively, what's it used for, etc. Okay. So unfortunately, this is supposed to come in one by one, but it somehow comes in all in one big lump. Okay, but anyway, first of all, you write your own header for the CSV, and each header represents a column. All right, and you must name the columns, no spaces and no numbers only. So you can have numbers, but not completely numbers. All right, you can have, let's say, 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. That's fine, but you can't have 1, 2, 3. That's illegal. Okay. The format for each column is by default text, but there can also be other formats like integers, reals, booleans, and so on to format the data. I'll show you some of this shortly. Okay, you cannot contain commas. You cannot use commas within headers or text, and you need to understand, for now at least, this is a read-only database. All right. Okay, so without, yeah, I need to explain something about the background. So in order for you to understand what I'm going to describe right now, you do need to know some parts of Smojo, which is like tuples, sequences, XTs, and higher order functions. So these 4 topics are quite important. There's plenty of documentation and tutorials in the Smojo tutorial. All right. And really all you need to know, I would say, is just the basic and local words part. If you just cover the basics and local words part, you would know 99% of all that needs to know about programming Smojo. Right. The remaining 1% is really for very advanced programming, okay, which you are unlikely to use unless you're programming for other people, right? Like making your own cloud modules and stuff like that. So you want to hit that Smojo button between community and login, and you will see a whole bunch of tutorials. Start with the basic. And like I said just now, I think try out the quizzes, read the examples, try out the quizzes, and there are answers there as well that you can use. Okay, so I will show you now a simple example of how to set up the CSV-example from Chatbot Extras, and how you can use the split text utility as well. There's a split text utility, which I think we also put in for one of you, and how to make in the context of making a recipe chatbot. Okay, so very basic kind of recipe chatbot. All right. Okay, I'll try and do this within 20 minutes, which is actually a bit packed. So I might have to rush a bit. Right. So first step, I'm going to call out the two things, which is the CSV example. Okay, I'm going to open up database as well, just an example for us to see how it's formatted. All right, and splitting text, which is another example that I've in your Chatbot Extras. Okay, and we're going to use all these three files. So the database.csv is an example database, right? So what's a database? You can see here, the first row, there are no comments. You cannot put in comments here like that. You cannot do that. It will fail. Okay, and you can't have blank lines and so on. You need to have every line needs to be occupied. That's the first rule. The second rule is that I have here a name, which is one header, HN here, which is another header, context, which is another header, and comments here, another header. Okay, so yeah, I've got how many headers here? 1, 2, 3, 4. By default, all of these are these are header names, and they cannot be completely numbers like 1, 2, 3. This is an illegal header name. You can't do that. And the header names are separated by commas. It's comma, comma, and a comma. Okay. And because they've got nothing after them, no slash after them, that means that these headers are all text. Okay. The exception here is the HN header. Let's call it HN here. And the HN header here, the format is an integer. /I means integer format. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You can see out here. Okay. It's possible for you to have headers. What's it called? Columns with no data. So all of these have got data here, for example, right? But maybe I can have one with no data. Let's say like no name. Then you just put a blank comma like that. You cannot remove the comma completely. You must put that comma there, but you can have no data, right? That's possible as well. Okay. Like here, let's say I want to remove the context comment for this. Can put in here like a blank, a double comma, which means that whatever is inside is blank. Okay, it's unknown or something else. Okay. All right. So I can save this, and the idea is that we're going to use this as our database for recipes. So what we're going to do is go back to C101. Okay. And maybe in my topics, I'm going to create a recipes database. All right. So for a recipe, I cannot have a comments again. So I need to have, not going to have blank lines either. So I'll have, let's say, maybe I'll have the name or title, right? And then I'm going to have a difficulty rating. So it's an integer, like 1 to 5, right? Or rating, rating. I think difficulty is probably a better one. Okay. And then maybe ingredients. And then instructions. Okay. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And I'm going to have maybe chicken pie. This is my first recipe. And let's say the difficulty is, let's say, 5. And ingredients, maybe chicken. Now, I cannot have a comma here, okay? I cannot have a comma because a comma is reserved. You cannot use it within your text, okay? Chicken. So what I can do is I can have a proxy for this. So instead of comma, let's say I put the @ symbol, sorry, the percentage symbol. Chicken. What else I'm going to have for chicken pie? Chicken pla, eggs. Right, so maybe 1 chicken, or 1 chicken, 1 cup of flour, 3 eggs. Okay, it's a very weird chicken pie recipe. I'm sure many of you are laughing. And let's say here For the instructions, I'll say boil the chicken, right? Wait for 5 minutes, right? And then maybe I say something like boil the chicken and put a comma here. Wait for 5 minutes. Or maybe I use a slash instead of this thing. I use a slash here for my separator, okay? So a slash means, or semicolon maybe, being better. So chicken, yeah, I think I use the semicolon. And so that means a comma. Wait for 5 minutes. Bake your pie. Eat fresh. All right, it's my first recipe. You can see that I'm not much of a chef. All right, and oops, and my, I'm not sure why this is happening. Okay, second recipe, maybe I'll try something else. Let's say bagels. Right, and the difficulty is 1, very easy recipe. Okay, and maybe I have 1 cup of flour, and let's say I'll have 1 cup of water, 1 tablespoon TB, I think, of salt, 1 stick of butter. All right, and for my instructions, I would say mix everything and steam, let's say. Yeah, I have no idea how to make a bagel, but you understand what I'm trying to say. I've actually have 2 recipes here, 1 for chicken pie and 1 for bagels. All right, I've been very careful not to use commas in my text. Okay, and instead of commas, I'm deciding as to just use a semicolon. Okay, and you'll see how that plays later on. So I've got 2. Maybe I'll add a 3rd one for this. Let's say eggs, fried egg, fried rice. All right, and difficulty, let's say it's 2. You can say 1 cup of rice, right? Onions, oil. Okay. Oh, I can't have a comma. Sorry. Must use semicolons. Oil and some, let's say, carrots. Right. And then instruction is mix everything in a wok and bring to a boil. Okay, some rubbish kind of comment there, but you get what I'm trying to say. All right, so I've got 3 of these recipes, and I will save my recipe database. This is my recipe database, right? And I'll save this under recipes.csv. Okay, that's the first step to create the database itself. And the database has got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns or headers. All right. The next step is for me to copy over the CSV example. I'm going to do that now into this part, into this folder, the topics folder. All right. Oops. Copy it, delete it. Right. So I'm going to call it recipes.m this time, because I'm going to amend this thing here, and I'm not going to save this file. Don't save it. Okay. So under recipes, okay, the important part is that I've got a pointer to recipe. So in this case, it'd be called recipes. Recipe or recipes? Recipes, right? Recipes.csv. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, and that's my database. I have a query here. Okay, and the query can be, you know, it's up to you to format it. And here I'm going to change this. Okay, I'm going to change all of this stuff. Right. So first of all, I'm going to say, okay, look, I'm going to make this thing really simple so that we don't have to make it too complex. So I'm going to say number, for example, is, or difficulty. Let's say difficulty is from 1 to 5. Okay. And if I say a difficulty, for example, it can be a difficulty of 1 to 5. Right. And here, difficulty, and maybe display by, or query by difficulty, right? But and then I'm going to display it. Okay. So this takes the difficulty that I'm looking for. All right. And maybe it makes the query on the database, and then it has a system to at least, print stuff out. Okay. So for difficulty, and this is the simplest thing you can do. Okay. Key in a difficulty. One to 5. All right. I don't need any of this stuff here. And here, I'm going to input the number, which is the difficulty itself. And I'm going to run the query first. Okay. Which is the difficulty, right? So here, I want to say difficulty. And this is because this is the name of the column that's being used. It must be this bigger than, less than or equal to this. So it's either something like that or easier. Okay, not more difficult than that. That's I'm going to display the difficulty. Now, if I want to say something else, I'll show you how to extend this beyond just this later on. Okay. The next step is to say, okay, look, how am I going to display this? So I've got the data already here. I'm going to bind this here to my access. And if there's no recipes, so this is my sequence. If it's empty, in other words, sequence is empty, there's no results from my query, then it will say, okay, look, there is nothing like this. All right, so there's no results, no recipes. All right, and here, if there are recipes, I just want to display just the titles alone, nothing else, not the internal parts and so on. Right, so I'm just going to say, okay, look, give me the titles alone, but I'm going to display all the titles. All right, so how do I do that? I'm going to say display title. Okay. Now this is the part where it's a bit tricky because you need to know some small job. And I'll explain roughly what this code does. Okay, you can see I've chopped out a lot of the code. Here, display title, all it's going to do, or I think I can write it within a queue here. So I'm going to just say the title. Title is called T, and maybe here, whatever is going to be input, I'm going to say title like that. Okay. So what it's doing here is this. Let me just explain this part here a bit more for you. So first of all, the user clicks in a difficulty from 1 to 5. The system detects the difficulty, and if it cannot detect a difficulty, let's say it's some other thing, right? Then you'll say give an IDK. All right. Okay. But once he's putting a difficulty from 1 to 5, it's going to look. First of all, it's going to run a query that's from this part here, and the query, what it does is it says, okay, look, in our database here, this DBase here is our database of recipes, right? In our DBase here, look for all the recipes whose difficulty is less than the one proposed by the user. It could be 5, it could be 6, it could be 7, and so on. Okay, you can have an equal sign if you want to also, but I'm going to use a less than sign, so we have more than one. We can print more than one title. Okay. So at this point here, just after the query, there is a sequence, which is a list of results back from our database. Right? It could be empty, or it could be it could contain data. So then I need to display them. All I want to display is just to display the titles in this case. Okay. So the first step is to use a local, which binds it, gives it a name, basically gives the sequence, the input sequence, a name. So the sequence is the results from the database. Okay. And the checks are there any data rows returned? If there are no data rows returned, it says no recipes matching your query, and then just just leaves. Okay. But if there is data being returned, there's an implication on the second line, then all it's going to do is to extract for every one of the entries. It's going to extract the title, format the title nicely into this string here. Actually, I don't even need to do this. All I can just say is just the type. I can also put in maybe a paragraph, a HTML formatting here. This is what I intended to do. Okay, something like that. And once I've got the titles in, I can then also, I can even make it, instead of doing something like this, I can make it into a list, display a list. So here, maybe I put in something like an ordered list. And then here, I add in the end of the ordered list. Okay. All right. So here, I'm making a list item from each of the titles. Okay. And then it just returns it just concatenates that. So concat means add the thing to whatever it was before. So it will slowly grow the response into a nice piece of text. And then last of all, I end it with a /on to actually end the text. And that is being returned at this point here, which is then being displayed back to the user. Okay, so now let me just answer some questions, because I see some questions here. I thought cannot have full stops too. The answer is no, you can have full stops. How about using quotes to have commas? Like, no, you cannot have quotes. Jason, you cannot have quotes for commas. Okay. And we'll sort out that question shortly. All right. So let me just test this out, publish this first, our recipes chatbot, and see whether it works or not. Okay. So success, at least it publishes. And that's because I didn't change over the main. Okay, so that's the main thing. I don't need this anymore. And right now it's called recipes.m. Okay, recipes.m. And let's publish this now. Okay, and then I'll just click on that. Key the difficulty 1 to 5. Let's say I select something like 5. Right, and so clearly here you can see it says chicken pie, bagels, fried rice. All right, this is actually the list that we gave, because all 5 satisfy the query. All right, but let's say if I try 1, it says bagels only. All right, if I try 3, it says bagels and fried rice. All right, 2, it says bagels and fried rice also, because this is difficulty, different difficulties. Now, if I want to also put in the difficulty as well, maybe in brackets. Okay, how do I do that? So here, maybe I want to just put this into a multi-line kind of situation, so it doesn't, crowd out too much, right? So here I need to actually say this is my row of data. All right. We call the row R for row. Okay. And let's put it X for. I like X. Okay, so X. All right, so X, I get the title from X, and I call it T. And I get the difficulty. Now remember, difficulty is a number, so I cannot just stuff it like that. I need to concat. And I put the CTX D for difficulty, okay? And here, I'm going to say, look, this is chicken pie. I'm going to put in the bracket difficulty. In brackets, in braces, like this, the bracket, square brackets, okay? So I'm putting now the title and the difficulty, okay? And I can say publish again. Let's give it a shot. So if I say 1, says bagels, which is difficulty 1. All right. I do a 5. It says chicken pie, bagels, and fried rice. Okay. Now, what if now I want to drill down and actually print the recipes? Okay. So maybe I have a different rule here. And here I have, let's say, a recipe. Okay. Right. And I have also then maybe a title perhaps, or something else. Okay. So maybe I have, let me see, I'm just thinking about how best to do this, because okay, how about this? So I have a recipe and I put in a number for the recipe as well. Okay, that's another possibility, right? But that will clash with these numbers here on for difficulty, right? But I still want to drill down into each of these recipes. Yeah. So there are a few ways of doing this. Unfortunately, none of them very short. Another way of doing this is to maybe do things like have ingredients. All right. Or title maybe. All right. So I can change something like recipe for chicken or for other stuff and so on. And I don't want to bind this to anything. So I'll just say this is my title, T for title. All right. And all I'm going to do then is just to display the recipe for the title, right? So in other words, I get the title, just one word. All right. Maybe it says bagels or something else, right? And all I'm going to do is take the title here and run a query to search for the title. All right. Search by title. So this is the query for the entire database for the difficulty. But I want to also by title. Let's say by title. Right. And what I can do is then say display recipe. Right. So it's very similar to this. Here I've got the difficulty, I run the query and run display, right? But here I'm just getting the title, searching by title here, and then here running a display function. So it's going to be very similar to this. All I'm going to do now is just to make this a bit, clean up the spaces, and maybe copy this for my by title. All right, and here's my title. T for title, and you can say it's going to be a T line. Yep. Okay. So it will check for the title because this is in our column, one of our columns, right? Column is called title, I think. Yeah, it's called title. All right. And then it will do the search for that. Yeah. Title, and then I've got the actual title here. So I need to put this in double quotes like that because it's a piece of text, and it's a like, which is it's going to see, is this anywhere within this title itself. Okay. Okay. So now all I have to do now then is to have a display for the recipe. So I can just copy my display function here, right? And I'll just push it down here, display recipe. Okay. So there are no recipes, you'll say nothing. Otherwise, I want to display the title, I want to display difficulty, I want to get everything basically, all right? But I only want the first part of it, so I don't need to have the reductions and other stuff. I only want the first matching recipe. I'm going to say XS head, okay? And then I'm going to call this, so I don't have to have any of this stuff here. Okay, so I've got all my stuff here now. Here I need there's a difference between this and this. Here for display recipe, it's only one recipe I want to display. I want to display. In which case, actually, I can make it even simpler than that. I can say by title, and I'm getting the head. But that's unsafe. It's best that you do something like this sequence, and you check and see if it's empty or not. So you can say there's no recipes matching. You get the head of that, and then you start to actually work with that head. Okay, so I've got the difficulty. Yeah, I'll just invent it. No, I don't do that. I've got the title, I've got the difficulty, I've got the instruction. Right? And I need the recipe itself, right? Or ingredients, sorry. Let me just look in here. Let's copy this and go back there. It's ingredients, G for ingredients, and I for instructions. So it's instructions. Okay. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of data that I need to display. I don't need the concat anymore. I'm just going to display some text here. Okay, so here I'm going to format this very nicely. I'm going to say H1, which is the bold settings, right, for the title. H1, and then I'm going to say something like difficulty. And then put in the D here. And then I'm going to put in the instructions. No, sorry for this one here. H2, sorry, ingredients normally, isn't it? Ingredients. So G for ingredients. Right, and then I have all my ingredients here. All right, and my instructions. Okay, we actually past 5 o'clock, so I'm going to speed this up. Okay. Okay, done. So let's see whether this works or not. I don't think it'll work, but for some reasons, but I'll publish and let's give it a shot. Okay, so first we start with the difficulty. Let's say difficulty 5. Okay, got chicken rice, bagels, fried rice. We'll try bagels. Okay, and here it says select 1 to 5, please. So why is it doing that? So let's go back to our thing here. So I've got the difficulty, I got the recipe, but I didn't say recipe, whatever. I just said, the thing straight away, right? So I'm going to say recipe, right? Recipe bagel. Bagels. Okay, and we get an error out here because it says, can't cast and other stuff like that, right? So let's figure out why it's doing that. So the first step is that it's going here. It's going to do this part here, and then it's going to display the recipe, right? So let's see where it went wrong. Okay, so let's do something really simple. So let's try and say that the title could be, we only look for a prefix. Right, instead of like, we'll use a prefix. Okay, in other words, is bagel prefixed in any one of these things or not? Okay, and then let's see if that works or not. Maybe like is not the best thing to use. So I'll try again. Oh. It could be a bug in our code, I think, or not. I'm not sure. Let me see if it's a bug here or not. Okay, so what do you do in situations like this, right? So the one thing you do is you first start to eliminate possible sources of error, all right? And one way of doing it is just to say maybe something like, we'll change the by title so that it returns just a string. Let's see if it does anything for us here or not. So let's say do something like this, concat like that. And what we can also do is don't use the chatbot because it doesn't give you very helpful error messages. Instead, you can do it here like this. I'm going to say recipe CIPE. All right, so let's try that and let's do a test. Okay, so it's giving you a null error of some kind, which means that it's probably flaking out somewhere out here, but I'm not really sure where it's flaking out. Let's be even more severe with our testing. So let's say we comment this out. Okay, and let's say all we're doing is just to return, do nothing. So just the title, and the title goes in, the title comes out, right? Let's try that and test it out. See that works. Okay, so it does give you bagels here, but somehow it's not working when we shove it into the database out here. Right, what I think is it's probably a bug somewhere. I'm not sure where it is though. It could be a bug in the code. Okay, so my guess is a bug in our code because yesterday actually we made some changes to the system, quite major changes. Okay, so but this stuff like this should actually work. It should actually give you the recipes. We'll fix the bug. Unfortunately, I can't do this immediately right now because we made the changes just too recently.